Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week a few friends get together with their randomly designed, randomly come up with story elements and smash them together like some kind of story meatloaf. I am, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to continue telling you this story. How's it going, guys?
Well, would you say we would do anything for the story, but we won't do that, whatever that is?
I don't know what you're referencing. I'm so sorry.
The story Meatloaf, a Meatloaf song.
Oh, I don't listen to Meatloaf, sorry.
Okay, sorry. Anyways.
I was thinking more of like the food, less of the band.
Okay.
So last week we started the prequel to Trouble in Party Town. So this was the prequel. We determined it was before the break. If you haven't listened to Trouble in Party Town, go listen to that and you'll understand that story. But last week we had Pantheon, prequel, and beginning scene. Does someone want to give the synopsis? The Pantheon is kind of a set of unnamed creatures of indeterminate power who were kind of given this slice of reality in order to test out, to see if their method of creation could produce a result that would be better than the creator, right? And I likened it kind of to like a human to a fly. What's right for the human is different than what's right to the fly. So just because these gods, there's two of them, were in opposition to the creator doesn't necessarily mean this whole world is evil. It just means it's different, right? And, a person isn't going to bother themselves with the wants and desires of a mouse, but a mouse isn't going to bother itself with the wants and desires of a flea. You know what I mean? So there's that just kind of reality. So the gods have created this world of dragons and humans and are trying to kind of get ready for a testing day where the creators will come back and kind of review their work and judge them whether their opposition to him was adequate and smart and a good idea.
And I like the part where this was successful. These creatures that they created they kind of thrived. And there was these two sentient species, the dragons and the humans, that worked well together. And there were a number of different things about them. But because they were so successful and they were kind of chuffed, as the British might say, about how well they had done, they tended to put a lot of their own attributes kind of leaked over into their creation.
Right.
And because of these two guys, what were they? Shaban and Chauvin?
Yeah, that sounds right.
They had some disagreements, and as a result, the creatures that they were, yanking around on the chain, so to speak, they had a tendency to disagree with each other too, kind of battles of wills going on.
Absolutely. And then there was the prequel part of it, and Reed, you had that.
Yeah, just that this kind of setting that this was in the pre-breaking. So this was during the time when they were the dragons and the humans were flourishing and living in peace and kind of developing in parallel.
Yeah. And then the beginning scene, Seth, is what you had.
Correct. So then with the beginning scene, you have kind of the waking up of someone into this world that is finding and realizing that this is not it's a foreign place. And so I think story-wise, what you have kind of is a foreign element or a foreign character coming into this world. And I think last week we kind of likened it to, right, they're kind of setting this test area up to kind of test their ideas, getting ready for the kiln, right? Much like you would run a piece of pottery to kind of test it or whatever into the kiln to see if it holds up. And that then becomes part of what this is this character outside of their reality of what they're designed to understand, kind of coming in and turning the kiln on, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely.
By kind of objectively kind of observing and inputting things into motion that start some of the process that become what in the last story becomes the breaking and, kind of puts it through the fire, as it would.
Absolutely. So what story elements did you guys have for this week? I had Wise Old Man.
I have villain sidekick.
I have hero.
Ooh, I want to hear about the hero. Is it the guy from the beginning scene, Seth?
It is the guy from the beginning scene.
Let's hear it.
So if this makes sense, and we can change it if you want, if it makes sense to change it, because I don't know what you might have for Wise Old Man. It just struck me that you might have had an idea for this. But my idea was that, so he comes in and he's kind of looking at the way this world is set up and starts giving critique, right? And it's starting to get like people to think and act outside of kind of that, this is how we've always done it, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, it's just they've always done it that way because it was kind of designed into having that mold, right? And so it starts testing, the edges of how it actually functions, and kind of starts down really the rollout of like people kind of pushing the edge of, well, why is it this way? Does it really work better if it's a different way? Or is this really how everything does work the best? And so over
what do
a
you
course,
mean? What do you mean when you said? Okay, just give me an example when you said, "Why does it work this way?" What is an it in your brain?
The world, the way it's structured, its hierarchy, it's the way that the things are interacting, the way that kind of like, and I mean, I'm not that I'm a huge fan of this exactly, but kind of like the idea, if it was really an organic thing, kind of that idea is like, well, why do we have a king instead of the people, people's voice being heard, right? Or why do we have a democracy when bringing in different thought to
random women hanging around in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government.
Yeah, that about sums it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so I think that it would be an interesting idea for him to be the hero, even though that from this world's perspective, he's not it's a different way to see the hero in the sense that, because I would say the way and what he kind of puts into motion starts in something that is very traumatic, as opposed to and how that gets shaped. I kind of have the idea for it here, but he seems to be, in the way that this world or these gods of this world might look at it, to be very traumatic to what has been set up, right?
Right.
And so
part of the reality is that the creator, if the creator sent them, he is going to ask the same questions and prod in the same way that this great rebellion that the creator just got done quelling did. And now the creator is kind of turning question around onto these gods and like, okay, you build your own thing, and then I'll come and ask you why. Oh, why does this doesn't make any sense? Not in kind of like a petulant child way, but in like, I think about, you were talking about last week, like building a tower and then coming around and poking and prodding it. And it essentially is in the same way that these gods poked and prodded the creator's world, right? Mm-hmm. So that's really interesting. I like that.
And I think to bring it around too, where this is something that the gods of this world aren't expecting, right? I would say that it would seem like they're expecting like some grand, white glove inspection. See, we've set it up and everything's functioning well, so you're going to give us a pass. Right? See, we've got it, everything, all the cogs and wheels work together, and it's just like, a perfect utopia, and there's no, kinks in it because it's, we've made it to work well. And so kind of like absolutely. An idea that instead of like doing a, white glove inspection, right? Inserting, let's say, his own agent, to put it in that way, and how much this character is getting like direct info from the creator, I would say that would probably be limited, but it just kind of unless we think that would make sense, but I don't really want to put it that way.
Yeah, I like the fact that he's the agent, but getting info straight from him, I don't think. Because part of it is, these gods, these creatures, the creator and these gods, they all function long form. They don't function. So the creator has been developing the kind of situations needed to ask for our hero to ask the questions he's going to ask since the beginning. He's been creating, putting the situations. So it's not like the prophets of old, like the prophets in the Old Testament, where God's like, hey, go and do this thing. And then he's like, okay. And he goes and does that thing. it's more because since he's also the hero, where he has kind of been raised in a specific place to ask the questions at the time that they're appropriate. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
That's how I kind of see it. But I mean, it's your hero, so you get to decide.
Yeah, and then kind of what I was thinking too with it is it's kind of like the idea, because at least from my memory and what I learned of some history, part of it is kind of like during the Revolutionary War when the British finally surrendered, right? The one guy was going to surrender to Washington, right? And Washington sent out a lower captain or general to accept the surrender.
Yeah.
Right. It had been humiliated by that British general before. And so it was kind of like almost kind of like a stab back at him. That's like, I'm going to have you humble yourself before this person that you humiliated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of idea. So it's like, instead of just doing that, kind of taking this, world idea, he sends his own creature, right, that they would have despised the idea of, right, or pushed against that, to be the one that kind of comes in and pokes the fire at what they've done.
Yeah,
right?
I like
So
that.
Instead of coming in himself,
that
they're expecting, right, because they're trying to put themselves on his level, he's taking, let's say, the lowly creature from what he had done and interplaces them there to kind of bring that humility structure. So that's why I would say some of that is structuring him as the hero in the broad sense of that. But then I would say
it's such a stab in the back, because it's like the creator's like, well, I'm going to use the human being biomass that you created to create the thing that is going to test you. I'm not going to come in as a separate thing. I'm going to work inside of the world that you made to show you that whatever the answer is.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this feeds really well into the, are you done, Seth? This feeds really well into the wise old man.
Okay, the one other thing that I was going to add with it is, in reference to this being the prequel, what I was going to interplace here is because he comes in, he kind of then he learns the language and starts educating himself to what's going on, and then starts writing critique and kind of interplacing commentary into the public sphere about what's going on. And so kind of basing this as well, kind of in a sense, kind of like I mentioned it earlier, the American Revolution, right? Where you have the founders and they kind of gathered a lot of the old stuff and didn't just take Plato's idea or Aristotle's idea, but we're kind of gathering, all the great thoughts on this to kind of boil out how to best mix that to make it work so that they could kind of overlap the errors or kinks that the other people had. And so in this way, this character becomes something that then later on in the Party Town, when Party Town sets itself up, right? I kind of also envision that being kind of like an American Revolution idea, right? You have the different kind of founders, and this character and his writing become some of the basis that then that kingdom uses to base their work on, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Much in the same way of that. And then the other thing with that is that he would then also be the, say, great, whatever it would be, an ancestor of one of those original people as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So really he's a hero, but he's a hero in thought. He's a teacher. He's a philosopher. He's a puzzler. Makes people think, right? It makes people kind of shift and change their ideas. He's not leading the charge or anything like that.
Yeah, because kind of an idea that it's not so much, and maybe he does, but it's kind of setting up that what he's doing isn't necessarily swooping in and saving the day now, but setting it up that this is the prequel. His thought and process is what's setting up part of what kind of saves the day or gives some structured reorganization to things later on. That was kind of my idea of.
Okay, cool. So the wise old man, this hero is not the first person that the creator has sent. In the Dune books, there is a person when Arrakis is being changed over from Harkonnen rule to Atreides rule. There's a person who is determined to be not Herald of the Change. Herald of the Change. Yeah. Basically, they're a person who's assigned duty is to watch and make sure that everything happens the way it was said it was supposed to happen, right? They don't have any power to do anything necessarily, but they have the power to, if they're there, that means that the emperor is going to hear about it. So you want to deal correctly, or at least semi-honestly in front of them. In the same way, our wise old man is a herald of the change. So he is a witness. He's an observer. He doesn't age. He came into being as soon as the gods had enough society together to, form a crowd. He was there. He can wear different faces should he want. He has power, He's been alive now for thousands of years. But his main duty, and there's a bunch of him, there's a bunch of them like him. Their main duty is to watch, is to look. They don't need to write a report. They have the eyes of the creator, right? So the creator looks through their eyes. The creator can view in many different ways, but the creator created them and sent them in order to be sort of the watchers. It's kind of a little bit how I imagined the wizards in Lord of the Rings. Like originally, they weren't there to it wasn't, Gandalf didn't come over to with the notes, find Bilbo, They came over to do other things and were tasked with kind of doing other things. But a lot of it was just kind of watching and guiding. That's what he is. There are a bunch of them, or there were a bunch of them. But through the years, even so, one of the creators, because the creator is doing this, one of his biggest tenets is agency, right? The freedom to choose for yourself what world it is you will be, what kind of person you will be, right? So even though these are creatures created by the creator, directly, their thoughts and motivations instilled in them, created as full-grown creatures, some of them have turned aside throughout the years. And those are powerful and terrible. And those are the ones that have led to, because those are things that are working kind of against the gods. And I didn't imagine them as guys or girls. I just imagined they didn't really have a sex necessarily. But they're kind of working against them. And this is what I imagine a lot of the things that our hero speaks against, right? Because they're slow and eventual influence is what has caused some deep rot to happen. Most of the time, if you're being influenced by one, like at the beginning when they were being influenced by one, it was never be cruel and evil. It was glory. Think of the glory that you could attain if you were to put your name on this discovery. You don't have to live in anyone's shadow, And this is, again, a weakness given to them, passed down to the humans by the gods and their own weakness, right? This personality trait is a thing that was passed down. So this is part of that, what's leading up to the breaking, is that on the outside, the facade is very clean and clear, and, there is no hunger, there's no need for, no one knows how to fight because no one has needed to fight. There's none of that, but there is a deep rot that is kind of has been making its way through. And this wise old man, because there are several layers of them. He is considered the most staunch because he is the most isolationist, he will not lift his hand for anything. And then there's ones farther along who will lift their hands to protect people for what's right. And then there's ones farther along who will lift their hands to protect and create a society to do what's right. And then there's ones farther along who will, it just kind of gets more and more and more and more tainted as it goes along. But he watches. So throughout this book, it'll cut to him kind of seeing something and watching it and seeing kind of to the truth of it. And he never says it out loud, right? He never talks about it. But I think we talked about in the old Trouble in Party Town, I think we talked about there being kind of information of the age before, right? And that information of the age before herald these watchers as the gods, even though they aren't, right? And a lot of the information that Yellen in Trouble in Party Town is piecing together about the age before the breaking, about life with the dragons, about dragons in general, is information that this wise old man, my idea is that he's named after a constellation, that all constellations are named after them. That he kind of, after the breaking, he kind of decides to solidify a bunch of information, maybe produces a number of tomes, and then sort of scatters them throughout the earth to kind of help humans in an offhanded way. He's not going to go and help the lost, wandering humans because that's not his job, but he is going to, okay, well, here, I just had an idea. So what if the reason why he makes these tomes at the end of the breaking is because somehow the other beings like him, the other watchers like him, find a way to, in killing the hero or in obstructing the hero, or they find a way to kill the gods or to lock them out. And so now the wise old man can't, like, his transmissions to the creator are no longer happening. And so he is now like writing things down and hiding them throughout the earth in case of something. What do you think of that? Kind of long-winded. Cool. I apologize.
No, that's all right. It's an interesting backdrop. I was just chuckling listening to you talk because of the juxtaposition between both what you and Seth have entered in with your characters, really rich, deep characters. Yeah. My villain sidekick is sort of the opposite. He goes by the moniker Flash, and he's a flashy character. And he is, shall we say, his impact is a mile wide and an inch deep. He is personally most interested in immediate gratification, his own amusement, his own pleasure, his own comfort. And he is kind of an imposing character. You notice him when he walks in the room. He's a big guy, imposing physically. He's fit. He's agile. He's a trickster. And I want to say his act isn't the right word. He's got a kind of a routine that he brings and then works it until, he kind of wears out his welcome and then moves on. And there's one of the aspects of him is that he managed early on to imprint a dragon that was of a very large clutch. And as a result, this dragon was somewhat stunted in genetic memory, especially in the spectrum of wisdom and virtue. He was skilled in the use of fire, a fire breather. He had a lot of, the memory that he did have was knowing which minerals to chew to create different types of fire. And of course, the trickster, because of the nature of this creation, he liked to use the fire of his dragon to, like I think the word that Seth used in the sequel, or the sequel to this story, is mesmerize in a magical way. And what you have here, this guy, the dragon, he could produce spectacularly brilliant flashes of white hot fire, and just flash, explosive. And Flash uses these. He uses this in his act, or I should say, his routine, to plant suggestion. And he's watching people as an astute. He's always looking for people's weaknesses, what motivates them, and he likes to implant suggestions that bring greed to the forefront. He's a flatterer. He brings, when there's somebody that looks like they would be, get in his way, he can bring discouragement, or he can bring, he lifts up in people anything that makes them think in terms of acting he encourages pettiness. He encourages cowardice, and he discourages any actual encouragement toward virtue of any kind. He does, however, lack an imagination, though. So he really needs to, he seeks a kind of I don't think this is conscious in his mind, but he is very much a free agent. But I think he seeks a truly bad guy to attach to. He is a villain sidekick. I mean, he is not the guy that's going to come up with anything earth-wrecking or shattering, or he doesn't even deal in big thoughts like that. He is just kind of a nasty guy who goes and stirs up the community and leaves it less functional. And once he, discourages enough people, and a few people start saying, "Hey, wait a minute, this guy is not good. He's kind of amusing, but he's just not getting anything done for us." And that's when he'll be quick to move on. He and his flashy fire-breathing dragon. But but anyway, he's kind of an entertainer, like I said, but it's mainly he's trying to just weasel his way into a situation so that he can benefit in the short term. And anyway, so that's Flash, and I'm curious to see where he falls into this story.
Yeah. One of the things.
Okay.
Oh, here, let me hear it. So,
Okay, so I had an idea here as far as like what's your idea with the Watchers, and you said something about like cutting out like why maybe he is like writing everything down now, right? So if in his eyes, like he understands that the creator is seeing what he's seen, so why would he need to write anything down, right?
right.
Perhaps because I just mentioned this series the other day, the like Out of the Silent Planet.
Yeah. The space trilogy.
The space
C.S. Lewis's
trilogy.
yeah.
And the idea of that, like it being locked down, right? So if this is like, okay, I'll give you this thing, like almost like a contract, right? And the creator sets out a like parameters, right? So what he decides to do for this test is up to him, right? And you have some of these Watchers that are being corrupted over to the other side, right? Maybe by particular influence of the gods there, right? And so
Right.
there's like a breach in contract, right, in how it was supposed to work, because that would then look like, right, like if an inspector was coming in and they were being given a bribe to overlook something or to help influence the result in a certain way,
Yeah.
right? So then there's kind of like a lockdown at a certain point where then it's like, well, you knew for a fact that these were my agents in the inspection and you are bribing them, right? You are trying to alter the outcome, right? And so it gets locked down. Not that the creator can't still see through, but it was kind of like an idea where, like, I don't know, just like in life in general, from, I would say, the Christian perspective, where sometimes it seems like, you know, why is God silent, right? And it's not that he's not there, right? But it might seem like he's disconnected or distant,
Yeah.
you know, through some kind of a testing period where he wants you to be making the right decisions, but is still there. And perhaps something like that is happening, but that is why then these other two gods are like under house arrest, and perhaps they're not directly influencing, but they've already pulled some of those agents over. And so why the Watchers all get, let's say, accredited as the gods of this world later on, because now those are the power structures that are now in the different veins that people are remembering from antiquity.
Yeah.
Right? And you have some that are like the wise old man now writing things down because, like, okay, maybe I can't, you know, maybe for some reason that what he thinks the connection is cut off. And so he starts writing the stuff down. Whereas then now you have all the other agents that are pulling the will of these forces now in this world. Does that make sense?
I think so.
But
I think so. I also think of like, I think it was Isaiah who prayed for rain a bunch, and then an angel came and said, I was supposed to come like 3 days ago, but I was waylaid by the principality of Persia.
That was Daniel.
Yeah, exactly. But the idea that like just because the creator can see what he's doing doesn't mean that, you know, it's like that's a theological question all by itself. You know, so the God of the universe sends a messenger down, and that messenger is waylaid by a demon, and that's going to stop Almighty God. Okay. How does that exactly work? You know? But yeah, I think your idea is good. That or the test has started, and so the gods' hands are now tied.
I think the test has been going on since they started because of what introducing the.
I'm saying that since the hero was born, the grading has started.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And part of me is thinking that even if this book is like 10 books long, it doesn't end with the creator coming down and being like pass or fail. It's like no. You have to see this entire universe all the way to its own heat death. Then we'll decide.
Yeah.
So any other interest? I'm liking this, how this is leading up. I have this idea, Reed, with this Flash guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so help me with this. I'm thinking about two different stories where they show kind of a post-scarcity world, which is kind of what I view a before the breaking, a post-scarcity world, right? The first one is Wheel of Time, the Age of Legend, right? where they don't even know how to do warfare anymore. There's even we're reading through Wheel of Time, and they talk about how Lewis Theron Telamon the dragon like had to read old books and relearn how to use the art of the sword because it just wasn't even a thing, right? And like we know how that breaking happened. People were boring for power. People were trying to get power that was more powerful than the one power, and they found the Dark One. They bored through the seal that sealed him away from the world, and he came back, and that was the breaking, or that was the beginning of the breaking. And then I think about Star Trek, right, which is kind of post-scarcity. The Federation is not a communist rule. It's like a true utopia. It's post-scarcity, but there's still private property, you know. And I think about that, and I'm like, what are we making here? What are we saying that the world is like, and how does Flash fit into that? Because I'm thinking about that, you know. So I don't think it's like the Age of Legend, because the Age of Legend, the fall that they did was truly an accident. They might have some way of knowing, but it was definitely an accident. You know, Lanfear did not know that going through the boring through the seal would release the Dark One. She didn't, right? But what we're looking at is a world that is imperfectly made. So I think it's more of like the Star Trek, which still has a criminal underworld, you know, which still has its tensions between countries and stuff, where like the Age of Legend in the Wheel of Time, from what I understand, is the whole world was at peace, you know? There was nothing. There was no conflict. So I think this world is still very much, still has tension and conflict, you know? But it is kind of at the same level of like post-scarcity kind of resources for everyone, you know, fantastical creations, huge cities, you know, just this kind of crazy place. And then Flash, I'm thinking that he is I'm trying to fit him in. I'm trying to fit him in because I don't know who the villain is of this story. The villain might just be ignorance and selfishness, you know? But you said he's kind of like for hire, like he doesn't like have any loyalty really, right?
Right.
Okay.
Just to his own, you know, his own comfort, his own amusement. Just
right.
He's very in the right now. He's not he's not thinking great thoughts.
Right. And so here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking because because the dragon that he bonded, you said was of a very large clutch, and therefore the genetic memory was very low, and therefore the temperance, which we see happening much later in the Trouble in Party Town between Xander and his dragon, did not happen.
Right. In fact, Lance was of such an imposing character that he was able to turn his dragon aside from any direction toward wisdom and virtue.
Right.
And
Right. And so I think part of the thing is what I kind of see as part of the thing that's going to be explored here is that Lance's dragon was part of an initiative, a kind of factory farm dragon, if you will. Mm-hmm. Like, we need to produce more dragons so that more people have them. We need to turn this incredibly precious ritual and ceremony and coming of age thing into a mass-produced thing, you know? And he was the product of that, right? His dragon was his thing with his dragon. So instead of it tempering, he in fact was able to overwhelm his dragon, and it was a corruption of sorts, you know? He could be like a sociopath who doesn't have like the empathy and stuff, and therefore the dragon, it just kind of threw him out of balance, basically.
I think another aspect to that, because one of the things going on that I think we established that brought to the breaking was some of the different people coming to these realizations and taking different sides of opinions, as in, well, then why do we need the dragons, or why do we need the humans, or then there should be less dragons, that way they're wiser, right? And so you have stuff like this which would cause the reaction, or a rightful reaction to a certain degree, from a group that says, oh, we can't have this. This is why we need to call out, and it would be better to have, a smaller clutch, right?
Yeah.
And kind of a reaction to what, Flash is doing, like a recognition that this is causing an issue, and to try to keep order, right? To keep order, well, we just have to, call out so that each clutch only has at most two eggs, right? And it's like, oh, that's destroying, right? It's like, well, we don't want this to happen, right? And so then it's like, well,
Yeah.
right. And then so that's, I don't know, that would be a way for that to come in. And maybe Flash has two dragons. Maybe that was like showing like a start of greed, where he had maybe a lesser dragon, which in this society would have put him a little bit lower.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have these, let's say, factory farms that then you could just buy, and they, let's say, run like some kind of trick so that you can basically pay enough money for them to forcefully imprint a second one.
Right. I would say that this part of this is on the tail end of because oftentimes people make bad decisions not in a vacuum. They make bad decisions because of hard times or difficult things happening, or you know what I mean? So there was a plague that killed off a bunch of dragons, right? Ending bloodlines, ending opportunities, because these dragons take, it could be 40 years to grow up until they can start laying eggs. And we could even say that it's the end of their life once they lay eggs, because they pass on that genetic memory, and then that's it. So what I'm thinking of is that there was a plague, which is what the gods initially thought was the beginning of the test, the beginning of the kiln. And it was, to a degree, because it killed off a bunch of dragons and humans, but mostly dragons. And now we're kind of like 30 years past that. And what they're projecting is we're going to have to, something's going to have to happen. And so what they did is, instead, there are several things that happened from this. A couple of monastic orders were created of people who, 10 people to a dragon, and the dragon wouldn't bond with any of them. It would just befriend them. And so they would go up into the mountains, and they would learn to communicate with the dragon without being bonded, through conversation, or one person would be bonded and they would teach them, and the people would learn to curb their own themselves. They wouldn't need the forced temperance shifting that comes with being bonded to a dragon, and having your temperament kind of evened out, and like the better part of wisdom, and just the way that the gods developed it. It's like, that's one of the things that happened, was that hundreds of people went and learned how to deal without having a dragon and still being a functional human being, right? The other parts of them created these factory farms, or created ways to trick dragons to bond to more than one person. And this is what started to spoil the gene pool, but spoil the bond, spoil it, and change it to a place that corruption and what happened to Lance, was that his name, could happen, and things like that. Flash. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like there was a thing that happened, and that's what's kind of caused all these crazy kind of offshoots just within the last 100 years or something, to happen. And this is part of what's this heating up, this changing. And then our hero was born and begins and grows up, and then begins to kind of speak out against these things, and we'll have to wait for the next episode to figure out what happens to him. Does that sound good? Or you guys got anything else you want to add?
I think that's a good place to stop it.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait, It Gets Better. We are enjoying this episode. I say we. I'm enjoying this episode. If you enjoy this episode, let me know. Send me an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com, or message me on Twitter at @getsbettercast. If you like this episode, let me know. If you didn't like this episode, let me know. I'd love to hear about what you think about it. Any constructive criticism is great. Until next time, I just want to urge you all just to wait, because it gets better.